All right, hello, and welcome back to the Agents Unleashed podcast, the show that helps you to sort the signal from the noise in the fast-paced world of agentic AI. On this week's show, dispatches from the open and closed sides of the AI frontier. We're going to take a look at an upcoming LLM from the Swiss AI initiative, check in on Mistral's flagship Le Chat assistant, and then take a look at new entries into the agentic AI for coding space from an up-and-coming startup called Reflection. Before we begin, let me tell you a little bit about OLIS and a little bit about Agents Unleashed. So OLIS is the best way for anyone to own and monetize their AI agent. That includes people just like you. You can learn more about how to do that at olis.network. And Agents Unleashed isn't just a podcast, it's also the premier event series for people interested in agentic AI. Events have been held all over the world with thousands of in-person attendees and more than 100 different speakers and presenters. Replays of the most recent event, which was held in Cannes in France, can be found on YouTube. You can find a link to that in the description box or the show note, or just head to olis.network/agents-unleashed for more details. This week's show is brought to you by our sponsor, Sigil. Sigil is one of the top performing liquid hedge funds in crypto worldwide. It's been run by crypto natives since 2018. Find out more at www.sigilfund.com. Okay, on with the show. So we're going to begin our journey today on the open source side of AI with some news from the Swiss AI initiative. Now, first, some background on the Swiss AI initiative. This is a collaborative effort between the Swiss Federal Technology Institute of Lausanne and ETH Zurich. It's actually, in their words, the world's largest open science and open source effort dedicated to AI foundation models. So they recently announced the launch of an upcoming LLM that looks to be not just an extremely strong contender in the performance space, but also one that's designed in such a way that it makes it what they're calling the world's first truly sovereign open large language model. Here's what I found cool about this effort. So first, it's fully open. So the source code, model weights, and training data are all going to be public. A second factor, and this one is to my knowledge the world's first, the model's training is 100% carbon neutral. They were able to achieve this by doing the training with the Alps supercomputer at CSCS Lugano, which runs on 100% carbon neutral hydropower. The third is that it is massively multilingual. So the model was trained on over 1,500 languages. The training data comprises about 60% English and 40% non-English languages, plus code and mathematics data. So the model is capable of generating output in over 1,000 different languages, which is quite cool because most of the larger commercial models only handle high resource languages. That is to say, languages that have a lot of available training data. As a sort of comparison, I looked to see if I could find out how many languages ChatGPT supports. I wasn't able to find an official decisive figure, but estimates seem to range between 85 and maybe 95, so let's say about 100. Finally, and this is particularly important for developers, the model is going to be available in two different sizes, one with 8 billion parameters and another with 70 billion parameters. Now, offering a small size is particularly important for adoption because of the way these models work. An 8 billion parameter model requires about 16 gigabytes of memory to run locally, so that means most people would be able to run the model on the machine that they already own. That's great for privacy-sensitive applications and also just to enable the sort of experimentation that needs to be possible for developers to be able to give us credible alternatives to the big centralized players. Worth lingering here for one more moment because, quote, the 70 billion parameter version will rank among the most powerful fully open source models worldwide. So the model is set to be released later this summer. It's going to come out under an Apache 2.0 license, which means that it will be fully open for anyone to use, modify, and build on. Alongside the release, ETH and EPFL say that they intend to publish detailed documentation covering everything from the architecture and training process to best practices for deployment and fine-tuning. Here's a quote from Antoine Bosselet. As scientists working at public institutions, our goal is to move the field forward by making open models accessible. We want organizations to be able to build on this foundation for their own use cases, end quote. So another state-of-the-art open source model is going to be a great asset, but this public good approach is particularly in line with the values of OLIS. AI agents that are personalized, privacy-preserving, they're only going to be enhanced by the availability of a model like this that's aligned with public values rather than corporate ones. I'm definitely going to be keeping a close eye on this project. I look forward to trying out the model when it's released, and we'll probably cover it on the show when that happens. You can find a link to this announcement, along with all of the other resources that I'm going to cover today, in the description box on YouTube or the show notes wherever you get the podcast. So today's show is sponsored by Sigil Fund, a top-performing regulated crypto hedge fund. Since 2018, Sigil has been delivering above-average performance via smart exposure to crypto markets. Now, after 4 years of private testing, they're opening up a new strategy for qualified investors, Sigil Stable. Sigil Stable focuses on yield farming and market-neutral strategies, providing returns uncorrelated with market prices, taking away the stress of crypto volatility. All of this comes with daily NAV reporting for investors and no lockups on the investment. Visit www.sigilfund.com to learn more. All right, back to the show. Okay, moving on, let's talk about Mistral's Le Chat. So Le Chat is, as of today, basically on par features-wise, in my opinion, with offerings from OpenAI, Google, but unlike those centralized players, they're much more clearly compliant with EU data sovereignty laws, GDPR protections, because they're based in Paris and France. So Mistral is well known for its open source, open weight models, and while this chat-optimized Le Chat product is proprietary, they do offer a level of control that other chat assistant models don't. One of the targets for a product like this is use in corporate settings, and so Le Chat offers, quote, up to 100% data residency and deployment in any cloud or data center. So that's something that you just cannot do with OpenAI or Gemini or similar centralized models. Now, in preparation for this segment, I put Le Chat through its paces, and I have to say that honestly, I'm very impressed. It's by far the fastest model I've ever used in terms of output speed. Sometimes the outputs seem to appear almost instantly, and there's also a flash answers feature that you can turn on to get even faster responses. Le Chat comes out of the box with some very cool features, and honestly much more than I think you might expect for something that you can use for free. Of course, there are limits to the number of messages that you can send on this free plan. There is a pro level subscription that offers you more access. But even on the free plan, you get built-in agents, the ability to create information libraries for your assistant to use, plus connections to Gmail and Google Calendar if that's something that you're interested in. There's also a deep research feature and the ability to turn on reasoning. I found the chat very responsive, and the recently added voice transcription, powered by the Voxtral model that we covered on last week's show, is super responsive. It actually didn't make any mistakes during the transcription tests that I ran. It also does great with images. Here's a sample. Of the three models, I think I've got to give it to Le Chat for nailing the realistic cat Paris rainy. All of those factors are present, and the image looks better than the competitors. It's great to see such a performant and feature-rich tool coming out of a company like Mistral, who've really put their money where their mouth is when it comes to offering open source, privacy-protecting, but still cutting-edge LLMs. At the risk of this sounding like a commercial for Le Chat, I'll point out a few flaws. Well, it's not as instructable as OpenAI's models, for example. I thought it might be fun to have Le Chat write the opening paragraph for this segment. When I tried, it wrote me high-quality content, but I thought that it was going to be immediately obvious that an LLM had written it, and that wasn't the effect that I was going for. Before I gave up, however, I tried giving it a transcript of the previous segment and instructing it to copy my tone. Now, this is something that I do with Gemini, OpenAI's models, all the time, and I find that most of the time they really get that right. Unfortunately, the best I got was this. This isn't just another chatbot. It's a cutting-edge tool designed to enhance productivity and creativity. Le Chat is equipped with advanced natural language processing, making interactions feel almost human. It can draft emails, brainstorm ideas, and understand the nuances of your tone. So in my opinion, it didn't really get what I wanted, and I did try several times and I was never able to get anything better than that. So it's not perfect at everything. However, overall, that's a very small quibble when it comes to what Le Chat can do. It's a really cool product. I think you should check it out for yourself. Links to where you can do that can be found in the description box or the show notes wherever you get the podcast. All right, now let's switch sides to closed source. Here's a quick hit from a small but buzzy new contender. So they're called Reflection AI. This is a new startup that was founded by some alumni from Google's DeepMind team, and they've just come out of stealth with an agentic AI for coding called Asimov. Now, if you've been paying attention, you'll know that this is a very hyped sector in AI. There's been a lot of investment and a lot of attention lately. There's a lot of different reasons for that, but overall, it's still a very new sector despite the interest. I still wanted to share Asimov, however, because it's got a few features that I find pretty interesting, and I think its alignment and lack of alignment with the decentralized open principles that we're interested in on this show and at Valory/Olus more generally makes for a pretty good contrast. So what makes Asimov different? Well, according to Reflection, it's a focus on code comprehension rather than completion. What do they mean by that? Well, they claim that the agent is designed to understand existing software systems so that it surfaces rationale, context, and logic rather than writing the code from scratch. It also has some interesting memory features. For example, developers can provide the tool with memories, like remember that X component acts strangely with Y, and then the agent will remember that and be able to surface it when it's relevant. This information can also be restricted to different role levels across your team. Another cool feature is that Asimov is actually a multi-agent system, just like OLIS agents are. So small retriever agents do a fast scanning process, and then a centralized reasoning agent provides contextualized answers. You can deploy Asimov on your own cloud infrastructure, which makes this an actually viable option for teams that don't want to or can't send their entire codebase to some external black box server just to use a tool. Lastly, and this is according to Reflections testing, so do keep that in mind, they said that in head-to-head evaluations, developers chose Asimov's answers 82% of the time when compared with Claude Code Sonnet 4 at 63%. That is an impressive lead, especially considering that for a lot of people, Claude is one of the best models out there for coding. Now, if you've used this tool or something like it, I'd love to hear from you. Get in touch. As far as I know, my colleagues at Valory haven't outsourced their work to a coding agent like this just yet, but it's definitely a growing sector, and it's one that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Before we wrap up this show today, I've got 3 quick stories from the world of agentic AI that we don't have time to go into in detail, but I think you might want to check out. OpenAI has recently announced the addition of an agent feature. It's available to people on ChatGPT's Pro, Plus, and Team levels. It combines features from Operator, which can interact with websites, deep research, and a computer use agent to let the tool perform tasks for you. Number 2, Replit's CEO has apologized after a Replit AI agent deleted a company's entire code base. He said that deleting the data was, quote, unacceptable and should never have been possible, end quote, and that they would move quickly to enhance the safety and robustness of the Replit product going forward. And lastly is a paper by Arthur Gervais and Li Yi Zhou. It's called AI Agent Smart Contract Exploitation Generation, where they detail a agentic execution-driven system that they call A1 that transforms any LLM to an end-to-end exploit generator. Links to all these stories and all of the other resources that we covered in the show today can be found in the description box or the show notes. All right, so that's going to be it for this week's episode of the show. I'd love to get your feedback. If you have any questions about the stories that we talked about, comments, ideas for where we could go next with the show, please get in touch with me. I am at Thomas Maybrier on X, and I'd also like to ask for your help to grow the show. You can do that by making sure that you're subscribed, that you follow the OSX account, and if you haven't yet left a review, a rating, a comment, or a reply, now's a great time to do it. You can also share the show with your friends, family, and colleagues, anyone that you think might enjoy hearing what we talk about on Agents Unleashed. All right, we'll leave it here. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time on the Agents Unleashed podcast.